Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 76 of Code Lyoko, The Lake, and in this episode, the group goes camping. That's pretty much exactly what happens. The group science class is going on a 2-day camping trip up to a lake, and while some members of the group are a little excited for this, to go out into the wilderness and so forth, Jeremy is a little paranoid, especially since where they're going is not going to have any cell phone towers or viable signals. So as a result, he won't be able to connect to the supercomputer should Xana attack. Aelita does ultimately manage to kind of appease him because, one, she tells him that this is going to be like their first trip together, so maybe they can enjoy that. And two, while the majority of their group is going, since Yumi is not in their class, she's going to end up staying behind. So if something goes wrong, they can call her and have her deal with it, so to speak. While this does appease Jeremy a little, he's of course still properly paranoid. Bottom line though, the group does end up going to the lake, though on the way Odd gets caught with Kiwi because he couldn't just leave the dog behind, which, yeah. But ultimately, yeah, Xana does actually launch an attack. Pretty much what happens is that when he activates a tower in the ice sector, and through it he manages to hack into the various cell phone towers that are surrounding, or at least one. He ends up hacking into one of the cell phone towers surrounding the lake, and ends up creating this weird black electric slime that's in the lake. And if anyone gets close to it, they get zapped. Thankfully, before this happened, Jeremy had Aelita call Yumi, and so they asked her if she could go out and if she could go and check the supercomputer, make sure that no towers are activated, which Yumi ultimately does, even though it caused her to miss a French test. But she does go, and sure enough, she finds that that a tower's been activated. But it turns out this is a war on two fronts today, as while the tower is activated and Xana sent monsters to guard it, plus William, he also launched an attack once more on the skid, this time sending the Schifozoa, which we haven't seen for a while, so nice to know it's still active. He sends the Schifozoa to the skid's hangar bay, and the Schifozoa begins siphoning energy directly from the skid, which, seriously, I think Jeremy should probably install a few security protocols on the hangar bay at least, because if the bad guys are finding new ways in, you might want to kind of up security as well, as all I'm saying. Seriously, the first time they got in, they took the elevator. So yeah, I feel like they should probably worry more. So they feel like he should probably worry more about that. But bottom line, Yumi pretty much. Bottom line, while Yumi is able to get. Bottom line, while both attacks are going on, Yumi is kind of clueless. But thankfully, once the sludge monster ends up attacking people, Jeremy does manage to take advantage of a cell tower on the lake to set up a connection and call Yumi. He manages to tell her He manages to tell her the proper procedures to boost the skid's defense, so that it won't be drained as quickly. And it turns out that Jeremy and Aelita have been working on a program to defend the skid should Xana ever launch any more attacks on it. But the problem is that it requires one of them to get there, which ultimately Aelita is the one that goes, since one, she's kind of needed on Lyoko to deactivate the tower. But even then, the lake is surrounded by that creature, so that's going to be a problem. As such, the group does manage to kind of create a double-pronged distraction to try and to try and get Aelita off the island. In this case, Odd sends Kiwi out on a boat into the middle of the lake, and he goes to get Jim and asks him to go get him. And while Jim takes a raft to try and go out there, Ulrich takes a raft himself and tries boating away while Jim is stuck in the middle of the lake, which of course gets the attention of the black sludge or whatever, which ultimately does get Ulrich, as when he gets close to shore, it manages to zap him and knocks him unconscious. But it turns out that was actually their plan, as while Ulrich was paddling, Aelita was also on the boat underneath a tarp. So the instant Ulrich got knocked out and got to shore and the sludge went away, Aelita just popped right out and took a bite that Sissy brought, because Sissy is Sissy. As such, Aelita takes the bike and books it to the factory, and in the meantime, after Yumi buffs the security for the skid, she manages to virtualize herself onto Lyoko to the ice sector. However, once she gets there, the only guards she finds are two crabs, but no William. She ultimately manages to take out the crabs, thankfully, but in the midst of the battle, she wound up getting knocked into the tower. She ultimately she's okay with this because now the monsters are gone, but it turns out that William was waiting inside the tower, which, to give credit where it's due, that's a smart plan. Like, while William is possessed or influenced or being manipulated by Xana, however you want to call it, I really don't know what the deal is at this point. I know it's one of those, but not fully one or the other, just whatever. At the same time, bottom line, while he is being controlled by Xana, you tend to forget that he is still a Lyoko warrior. He may not follow the same rules as the group, since he spent enough time in the digital seas that whenever he's supposed to be devirtualized, he just most likely returns to Xana. And ultimately, and of course he has more command of the monsters, but bottom line, he has just as much powers, and he can do just as much stuff as any of the other Lyoko warriors. So it makes sense that he'd be able to enter and exit any of the towers just as easily as the rest of the group. Which, again, I kind of like that. It's actually a smart move, especially since with that plan in mind, it means that if Aelita had managed to get there, William could have been the one waiting for her. That's actually a rather smart move, which I never thought about. I like that. But yeah, since Yumi was the first one to go in there, William knocks her out of the tower and they get into a fight. But unfortunately, during the fight, Yumi's fans get knocked out of her hands, and William has her at his mercy. However, before he gets the chance to devirtualize her, Yumi tries pleading with him. She actually says, "Come on, William, you're a Lyoko warrior. You made a promise." And strangely, that works. As once she says this, William starts to falter. He drops his Buster Sword, and memories of when he first joined the group start playing before his eyes, and he just starts struggling. Right there, like he can't, like he's just clutching his head, writhing. He's just it looks like it's an internal conflict, which, believe it or not, I actually kind of like that. But pretty much, Aelita does manage to take this opportunity to try and while William is distracted, Aelita does manage to make it to the tower, and she managed to input the program that she and Jeremy have been working on, and manages to manages to knock off the Schivazoa, actually devirtualizing it, which I think is cool. But pretty much, while that happens, it's actually just kind of cool seeing William just acting like this, and for just 1 second he seems to stop, and Yumi does end up reaching out to him and even touches his face, and he looks remorseful and sad, and looks kind of like he's in pain. But that ultimately doesn't last, as he immediately grins evilly again, grabs Yumi's hand and throws her aside, grabbing his Buster Sword and starting the fight anew. Ultimately, Aelita does manage to get herself into Lyoko just in time before William devirtualizes or knocks Yumi into the digital sea, and ultimately she manages to blast William, knocking him into the sea herself. Which ultimately leads to Yumi kind of being remorseful, because just for a moment, William did come back out, which I like that too, and I think that's a nice character moment. That nice character moment, as the group is actively still trying to free him. But in the meantime, they still have the electric blob to worry about, as it's now reached on the land, and while Jeremy is able to protect all the students by going to the tower, as it acts as a lightning rod, eventually the lightning strikes it's producing are going to become too powerful, and eventually the whole island is just going to be fried. Thankfully, Aelita manages to devirtualize Yumi so she can return to the factory, and Aelita herself goes into the tower and deactivates it, saving everyone's lives. And so with Yumi in the factory, she manages to launch a return to the past, which, based on the dialogue in the next scene, that she turned back time by a week. But pretty much, in that week, Jeremy further explains what the program they were working on is. Essentially, what it does is that for just a few seconds, the program will activate one tower in each of the 4 sectors and launch enough power directly into the skid to pretty much knock off anything that gets close to it, which is why the Schifozoa got zapped the way it was. It doesn't last long, like I said, just a few seconds, but it's still an effective strategy. And in the week since that incident occurred, Jeremy and Aelita have been working on it and strengthening it to the point where now that they now feel comfortable leaving it alone. Mostly because, as we've seen in the series, Xana doesn't ever try the same tactic twice because, as Jeremy puts in this episode, he's smart enough to not try this. He's just smart enough to know it won't work a second time. And so the episode ends with Jeremy and Aelita just kind of being happy to actually get some off time to spend some quality time together, so to speak. And this time, thankfully, Odd did not bring Kiwi along as it cuts back to the school, and Odd pretty much charged Yumi with watching the dog. So overall, I liked the episode. It was it was still just kind of a nice. It was a cute episode with a nice with a good premise. Just the group kind of going off away and creating another sense of conflict. I do like seeing them more develop the stuff with the skip. With them trying, I do like seeing the group developing more strategies to take on Xana. I like seeing that, such as them preparing stronger protocols to protect the skid, which I guess in light of maybe not installing security protocols for the friggin' hangar, which I think Jeremy should probably do. At the same time, I do like that they are still taking defensive measures to go after the skid. I just think maybe they should be more active measures, since even the stuff with the towers is only viable as long as there's someone at the supercomputer. Although, to be fair, considering that they know that they can probably access the supercomputer from Jeremy's laptop hooked into that antenna on the island, you could make the argument that that he knows that if Xana does try that again, he can still zap it, so whatever. In the meantime, it also is kind of nice to see in the episode that they're still keeping up with the group was educated more on how the supercomputer works. As in this episode, we see Yumi actively doing more stuff on the computer. It's still not to the level of Jeremy and Aelita's knowledge, but she's at least smart enough to launch the virtualization process, to check on the sectors, get herself into Lyoko, and even launch a Return to the Past, which I like that. I like that. I like that that's still a regular thing in canon, that while Jeremy's still the regular tech guy, I like that they still have that basic knowledge, because again, just kind of cool. On top of that, one of the things that I think makes this episode really stand out, which I think can keep me going forward, was just the brief snippet with William. Now, I don't know if this is going to become a regular thing in the series, but I actually really like the idea of William still being conscious up here while he's being possessed by Xana. Because, in a way, it gives you hope. And seeing him actively fighting back when Yumi manages to reach him, I think is kind of cool. Because it lets the group, and by extension the audience, know that William is still in there potentially fighting Xana off. Which I think adds for a nice little angle, because you couldn't continue, because as he does that, you want to see him more get free, and because they've showcased that he's still under there, it opens up the opportunity to potentially have William still act as an ally from the other side. Because while I don't see him I'm not saying he'll just break free from Xana's control, but just maybe see little snippets of William in there. Just like little things here and there. Like maybe he gives the group a warning here and there, or maybe they can reach him. While they're let's say for example, the group is fighting William on Lyoko. They're in the middle of a mission, or maybe they're doing some training ops, and then William comes in to try and ruin their days. During the fight, he could get close enough to one, and just for a second he says something that's clearly not Xana. Just tells them look here, look there, or says a word that becomes important later. Just to showcase that maybe William is in there, or before he goes back into villain territory. Stuff like that, I think, is actually interesting because it showcases that William, even while possessed, is still strong. He still wants to fight Zan. He still wants to help the group. And on top of that, that stuff like that gives you hope. Like, the same way that gave Yumi and Aelita hope when William fought back just briefly, because it lets you know that it's not that saving him is not a lost cause. He's not gone and Xana's just using him like a puppet. He is still around. There is still hope to save him. It's just that they need to keep trying. And seeing those little snippets of the real William coming out, that's enough to give the group and the audience hope. Because, like I said, we spent 2 seasons before this season getting to know the character, seeing how he handles situations, and while he kind of does have a big head and is egotistical, he's still a good person, and you do want to see him get saved. So it is a nice idea that I feel could be further explored. Again, I'm not saying that they have to just like free him right away, but just maybe small snippets like what we got here, just little things here and there that show he's still in there. Him maybe helping the group in a subtle way on one occasion, or giving them a hint here, or maybe struggling like he did in this episode before Xana re-exerts control. I'm not saying they should do it all the time, because eventually I feel like that it would be kind of played out. Like, yeah, we know, we get it. William's still fighting back. When are they going to free him? But if they actually take more time to showcase that, it can still, just, again, not too much, but just a little bit here, a little bit there, it can give the audience hope to make you, and make you realize we're going to get you, and it can help you want to see him get him back. So, I like that. I liked seeing that. And again, the episode is still, and it still showcases, and again, I still liked seeing the group and Xana being smart. Again, I already mentioned them installing the security protocols of the towers, though again, I think that they probably should still operate some more regular protocols just for the friggin' hangar. But at the same time, it was cool to see Xana take advantage of the fact that he's got a Lyoko warrior under his sway by having him wait in the tower. It's just that the only reason that didn't go the way that you would think is because Yumi was the one that went in there first instead of Aelita, so I like that. That's smart. I like seeing, and another little notable thing about this episode, this is the last time we see the group in their original clothes. Like, I'm not kidding. Jeremy's back, and for this episode, Jeremy's back to wearing the blue shirt. We see Ulrich wearing his short sleeve jacket, Odd wearing his regular uniform. Aelita in her original outfit before she changed. I don't know. I don't know if that was like an animation error, or this episode aired out of order from when it was supposed to. Like, maybe it was supposed to be aired earlier in the season and then it just didn't happen. But that's still like that. It's kind of cool. And I guess if I have to say any potential flaws, it's that, again, the regular problem is just kind of substantial. It is cool to see the group kind of sequestered away from the factory, thus making their resources limited, as Yumi's the only one at the factory who can actually do stuff, and Aelita, who's kind of the most important member of the group for this stuff, is away on the island, so they have to find ways to get around that. So, actually, that's another compliment I'll give. I like how the group does get around that. Like, because they know they have to distract on 2 fronts. But first the teachers who are trying to protect them, and then one fooling Xana. So I like the fact that the group does actually act smart by having Odd do the first distraction and then having Ulrich act as the secondary distraction. I like that. That's still smart. And I guess I'll give credit where it's due. The idea of the lightning charges is definitely scary, especially as the thing gets stronger and just blasting lightning all across the island. And the only reason that nobody gets too fried is because they manage to stay under the antenna. And even then, Jeremy says that that's a temporary solution because eventually lightning's going to get so strong that the island's just going to be fried. So I do like that. I still like that sense of dread. Still cool. Adds enough weight to keep everything strong. I'm trying to think of other potential flaws. Again, if I have to say anything, maybe the stuff with William before he turns felt a little out of nowhere, because it feels like because Yumi didn't say anything like this to William in any other episode. So I feel like and even then when he first turned, Yumi said, "I knew we shouldn't have trusted you." shouldn't have trusted you. So it does feel a little strange to have her say that in this episode, like just right out of nowhere. Again, it is cool that it actually did work and actually see something happening, but it would have been nicer if, like in earlier episodes, the group had tried to reach William, but it didn't work. But then this time, when Yumi does cite something specific, such as the promise that William made, that actually does get to him enough to at least have him fight back against Santa briefly. I think that's cool. I think that would have been nice. It's just that again, it comes right out of nowhere. That nowhere in no other episodes do they make any attempts to try and reach him. It's just that this is the one they do that. So I guess that's a flaw. Again, before and up until that moment, the episode did still feel like a standard Lyoko adventure. But I think what made it clear that this episode that things were gonna hit, the reset button was gonna be hit, was that early on I got caught with Kiwi, because as we've established, as they've shown, animals are not allowed on school grounds. So Odd has gone to great lengths to hide Kiwi, even if he's not always smart about it. And the instant Kiwi got found out, you're like, okay, yeah, they're gonna do a return to the past so that no one finds out about this. So, yeah, that's what happens. Again, I suppose I do think it's kind of, again, it's still a good episode though. I like seeing it's cool seeing the group kind of sequestered and having to work around it. It's cool. It's nice seeing everyone be smart on both sides. Actually, I like seeing the character stuff with Yumi and William and the hope that he's coming back. The threat is still legitimately cool and threatening. It's nice. It's got good action and ultimately a nice sweet resolution. So yeah, on the whole, still a good episode. Really liked it. So yeah. That's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.